I never thought that I would be actually talking about this on my channel or do a video about this, but all of a sudden was led to share my experience on this, and I hope this is something that will help you that is watching. So I know that you see from the title that, you know, that I'm saying that I'm grateful for something that is not something that people would normally say that they are grateful for. But with upon reflection and spending so much time with the Lord, and also thinking about how this affected me throughout my life, it has also helped and shaped the way things have happened in my life, and has just shown how God had his hand over my life, and he showed his favor on me, and just revealed so many things about God that, I've grown to love about him, and has helped me to have a deeper relationship with him. So in a nutshell, PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. It is basically a hormone disorder. It's when your ovaries they get cysts. It is, they say it can be genetic. There is no like definite reason how some women get it and some women don't, what causes it for somebody to get it. But it's basically disrupt the cycle, the normal function of your hormones, especially during your menstrual cycle, where you release eggs. When you have PCOS, you actually release fewer eggs than normal, which in turn causes you to have certain hindrances. One of those, which is very common in women, is fertility. Because you're not producing enough eggs, it causes you to have issues getting pregnant. PCOS is one of those things that it is commonly misdiagnosed, because a lot of the symptoms that come with having PCOS are common with other things that can cause. It has the similar symptoms to other issues that you can experience. One of those symptoms that come with PCOS is acne, and there is so many things that can make you have acne. Another thing is, having irregular periods. Um, most doctors don't think of it. The first thing is not to find out if you're PCOS. They always try to, they always look into other things. So, a lot of women go throughout their life not diagnosed with this disorder, or syndrome, I guess, because it is something that is not commonly diagnosed. And my situation is very different to a lot of women's situation. A lot of women tend to be diagnosed later on in their life, when they are trying to start a family. And that's when, they deduce, and they try to find out different things. And then they later find out that it's PCOS, or and other disorders that involve hormones is endometriosis, Hashimoto, and there's a couple of other ones I don't know, but there's quite a few of them. So it's very hard um, for doctors to diagnose women when it comes to hormones. So anyway, so that's just like a summary of that. I can do a video to go if you'd like a deep dive into like the whole thing about PCOS. But today I'm just going to share as to why I say that I'm grateful for PCOS, in my life. I will go back to as far as when I was younger, elementary age. I used to have the most terrible stomach aches. No one else in my family would have these stomach aches. I know my sister, one of my sisters, she would get migraines. But it wasn't as often as I would get my stomach aches. I would have the worst stomach aches. And my mom, being a pharmacist, she would try and different medications. She would give me stuff that would give temporary relief at times. But it got so bad to the point that there was one time my parents had to take me to the ER, because my mom I'm sure she was frustrated because she couldn't figure out what was causing my stomach aches, what would give me relief. And, I one night I woke up in the middle of the night with the worst stomach ache ever. Like I was crying. I could not lie down. Nothing was giving me relief. The bathroom, my mom tried like ways to, go to the bathroom, because I do that too as a mom. When my kids have a stomach ache, I trying to find ways so that they can relieve themselves in the bathroom. That did not work for me. She tried like, like a hot water bottle, like, natural stuff. Nothing worked, and ended up at the hospital. And, the doctor, checked my stomach. It was actually kind of hard, um, my abdomen, and, examined me. I don't remember what kind of test that they did. This was so long ago. And basically the doctor was like, you need to make sure I don't remember what he said. He basically was like, it must have been something I ate, or, something that just doesn't agree with my stomach. And he was like, stay away from a lot of candy. Make sure you chew your food, and, don't eat your food too fast. And to just watch what I eat. So ever since then, I've actually changed my habits, because I used to just sometimes I would chew a little bit and swallow it. Sometimes I wouldn't even chew my food. I would just swallow it. I ate a lot of like hard candy. After that incident, I stopped eating hard candy. Till this day, I do not like hard candy. Um, and I'm careful about how much sweets I consume. Since that day, I eat slower. Like, people that know me always say that, I eat slow. They make fun of me that I eat slow, that I take my time to eat. Is because of that incident. I was so traumatized by that incident that I slow down the way I eat. I make sure that I fully chew all my food. And looking back, I realized that, the Lord gave me insight that that was my PCOS flaring up, and but at that time, no one knew what PCOS was. I mean, when I revealed it to my mom, when I found out, she didn't know. She was like shocked. And she was like, nobody in the family has that. And I'm sure that was not something that was common, a common diagnosis. So that was my first incident of like something to do with my abdomen, my stomach. And I believe that was my PCOS flaring up. And then cut to now high school. I'm in boarding school, and that's when we start getting our periods. So some people get earlier than that, but most of us, it was during high school around 12. I was a late bloomer, so I got mine when I was 13. And the first month's fine when I got it. So I was like excited, which is weird, but I was excited because I was like one of the last people to get their periods. So I just felt weird, like why I hadn't gotten my menstruation cycle and everybody else had. And when you're living with other girls, you realize how different you are a lot more, and you want to be like everybody else. Um, so finally I got my menstruation cycle, but after and then afterwards, 1 month went by, I didn't get my cycle. The second month went by, I didn't get my cycle. The third month went by and I didn't get my cycle. I was like, okay, this is weird. And then I got my cycle again. And I noticed it was weird because, you notice everybody else every month they get a cycle, and you get the class of, the periods and what happens, how long is a cycle, it's every month, and they teach you, how to track and all that stuff. So I was like, it's weird. Why am my period skipping? And, at that age, I was just like, okay, I guess it's, I was kind of like, thank God that I don't get it every month because of how annoying it is, having to wear pads or tampons, having to deal with the uncomfortability, the pain, the pain that comes with your periods. So I was just like, hey, I guess I'm lucky. I don't have to experience it every month. But on the flip side, I just felt weird. I felt like an alien, like, oh my gosh, why am I the only one who doesn't have it every month? And I kind of like was comparing myself to others. And this is where the spirit of comparison started. It was in high school. Well, before that, but it got amplified in high school, where I'm just comparing myself like, oh, why am I not having the same experiences as everybody else? Even though it's something that is not enjoyable. You want to be like everybody else. You don't want to seem like you're different, like there's something wrong with you. Um, so that's another symptom of PCOS, but I didn't know that. So I went throughout high school, like skipping my period. Like the longest there was a year I went 6 months without getting my period. And I didn't really mention this to like the school nurse, would tell it to many people because I was kind of like embarrassed. I thought maybe there was something wrong with me, or I just thought, okay, maybe it is normal. Maybe I'm just different and it's kind of normal. But, that experience actually saved me from being sexually active early and throughout high school, because I didn't want to go through that phase of like, having a pregnancy scare if anything happened, because I wouldn't know, because since I already skipped my periods, then I would have that uncertainty of like, okay, is it because my body's acting weird because I always skip my period, or am I pregnant? I didn't want to go through that. So I guess it just, and at that time I really didn't like boys. I thought they were annoying. But that, I guess, shielded me from really engaging in that way. But I was not perfect. After high school, I did, you know, go that route, and I'm not proud of it. But yeah, so I was always comparing myself. I always thought that was something wrong, like I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. So, and I didn't know that was PCOS. So then, cut to before I go to high school, um, I have sex with my then boyfriend. I lose my virginity, and unfortunately, I engaged in that activity, and then there was a moment. I don't know why. There was a moment that I was now worried that I would be. I was worried that, oh my gosh, that I would be pregnant, because they always tell you one of the symptoms, even on when you watch TV movies, the most common symptom that they always say is like you skip your period, and that's how you know that you're going to be pregnant, until you actually confirm it with a pregnancy test and going to see a doctor. My period was kind of being consistent month to month. I think it was consistent maybe like 3 months, because sometimes we'll do that. It'll be consistent for like 3 months. So I think I was being consistent for a few months. And then I noticed that it was off the following month after that. And I was like, now I was afraid that, oh my gosh, could I be pregnant? I had a pregnancy scare. And I go to a pharmacy near where I lived. At this time, I was driving. So, because this is right before college, I had my license. I was now driving. And I went to the pharmacy, and also I wasn't seeing a gynecologist. So this is a really short period of time. I I become like sexually active and before going to college. So I didn't see a gynecologist, and I wasn't seeing a doctor at the time. So I go to the pharmacy to get the Plan B. Um, and as I was going to check out at the pharmacy, this lady, a pharmacist, of course, and my mom is a pharmacist. So, and I go, and this lady, she looks at me, and then she starts like giving me a lecture about, how I'm being irresponsible, that, I'm too young to be like engaging in that kind of activity, and, that I should be careful. This is not something that I should be buying at my age. And at this time, I was 18. I was 18 when this happened. And it felt like a rebuke. Like I felt like I had committed the worst sin ever. The way she looked at me, like she was judging me, and like I felt so terrible. I felt embarrassed. There was other people in the pharmacy. It was kind of like going to CVS here in America. It was like equivalent of CVS or Walgreens. And imagine you're checking out, and the person is just like telling you all this stuff. Now, granted, I understand she's probably a mother, and she was probably like upset and just like telling me to be careful. But at that time, I just felt so bad, and I felt so embarrassed. And she was just like, it just felt like she was judging me. And she was a Caucasian lady. Now I'm thinking also she's looking down on me because like I'm a black girl. And she's probably thinking that I'm a person that makes horrible decisions. And, and she, I was able to like buy it and then leave the pharmacy. But I just felt so bad after she spoke to me like that. Like she was just like, this is not something you should be doing. You should not even be buying this. Like, where are your parents? And all this stuff. Like, I think she spoke to me for like, it felt like for a long time, but it probably was like 5, 6 minutes. She was like talking to me. And it was with like no compassion. I did not feel any compassion from her or like any empathy or nothing. Like, she just wanted me to know that what I was doing was wrong. And I'm telling you, from that day onwards, that actually made me make that decision that, when people say their life flashed right in front of you, like, it felt like I had a vision of like how it would be if I did get pregnant, how my life would be different, how like I wouldn't be able to go to college, how I'll be kicked out of the house by my parents, especially my dad, may he rest in peace. And like, just all of that just flashed right in front of me, and I was just like, when I took the plan B, I think it's like 2 days. At that time, it's like 2 days. I don't know what it's like now. It's been so long. um, that was the first and last time I ever had a pregnancy scare. Um, but when I took that and then I finally got my period, I was so happy. I've never been so happy to have my period. I was so happy. So when I see like shows or movies where they do that, I was like, I get it. I get it when they have that feeling where it's like, thank God I am not pregnant and that I got my period. And ever since that moment, that shaped the rest of my life. Like, that really was pivotal moment in my life, because of that incident, I decided to be completely celibate all throughout college. I didn't even date. I was single the whole time I was in Switzerland, which was almost 5 years. I was like, I'm not going to go through that again, and I'm going to be respectful to my parents, and they're working hard and they're getting me into an expensive school. So I started, when my first 2 weeks in Switzerland, I had the stomach aches happened again. I had the worst stomach aches for 2 weeks. And, I realized that was the PCOS flaring up again because of change of diet, because I was used to eating organic. And, now I'm eating a lot more processed foods. So my body was not used to it. And your with PCOS, you become really sensitive to the type of food you eat, especially carbs. Carbs tend to really like flare up your PCOS. For me, that is. So, but after that, after my body got used to the food, because I was basically living there, so my body got used to the food, I didn't have the stomach aches again. And another thing with PCOS is that I struggled with acne, and I was the only person in my family that struggled with that. And it was so frustrating. Like, I tried so many products, because again, my mom was a pharmacist. I would try different products, and that also affected my self-esteem. I was already had low self-esteem, and then add the acne on top of that was horrible. So like, high school, it wasn't horrible, but I just did not understand my body in high school. I was frustrated with my body in high school. I felt ugly in high school. And on top of that, my friends were popular. They were good looking, they got all the attention, and I just felt like a black sheep. So, but that, in hindsight, I look back, that was God protecting me from, being focusing on guys and getting all the attention from guys and not knowing how to deal with that. So, um, cut to college in Switzerland, single the whole time. My PCOS didn't even act up around that time. I actually was not getting as much. Usually, when I'd get my period, I would get like, that's when I'd get like pimples, get acne, but it actually reduced when I was in Switzerland. And I'm guessing it's also because of the skincare products were more natural. And, my body was getting used to the food there. And, the quality of life was very different, and it was high quality. The quality of life was pretty good. The air is good, the water is really fresh. Like, the quality of life is very different and rich over there. So it worked to my advantage. My PCOS didn't flare up. I started really getting any pimples or any or acne. My skin was improving. Um, Another symptom of the PCOS was like hair thinning, or like you're stunting the growth of your hair. I started, my hair started to actually grow. So things were great there. So like God really protected me and was like watching over me when I was in Switzerland. That's another testimony of the different things that happened in Switzerland. I knew that God was watching over me, but He was watching over me with the PCOS because I was there all by myself with no family. I only had friends to depend on, but friends are not always going to be there. So God was my source of protection, and He protected me and made sure that I didn't end up in the hospital. I didn't know what a clinic looked like. I didn't need to go to see a doctor. I never saw a doctor the whole 5 years I was there. The only people I saw medically was like the dentist to get my wisdom teeth pulled out, and the pharmacy if I had a cold or a flu, simple stuff that I could buy over the counter, where I could buy medicine over the counter for where I didn't need a doctor. So the Lord, was gracious to me, and I didn't have any issues with my PCOS while I was far away from home, alone in another country, in a totally different continent. Now and then switch to now that I moved to America, and I get married, and the beginning of my marriage, my mother-in-law's like, you need to start seeing a gynecologist. And I didn't know what that was. I was like a gynecologist because I never went to see one. Again, I mentioned I never saw one, in high school and in college. And she's like, you need to go see a gynecologist. It's important, especially, you're with a partner, and, you have to make sure that everything is good. And especially when down the line you're thinking of having kids. So you need to go see a gynecologist. So, and I'm so grateful for that doctor. I went to a clinic where, at the time I didn't have insurance because I was working at Dunkin' at the time. They don't offer insurance, and, you're part-time, so they don't pay a lot. So there's a clinic that they have here. I don't know if they still have it, where you can see a doctor without insurance. They take care of people who can't afford insurance, and you just show your pay stubs as proof that, you make minimum wage. That you don't make a lot to afford insurance. And this is before there was Obamacare, I think. Yeah. Um, so, so that my first appointment, and, the doctor asked me questions, and then asked me, like, they always ask you, when is your last period? And I remember saying that I don't remember because my periods are irregular. So then he looked at me and was like, oh, your periods are irregular. And I think he asked me, like, if I get acne, and he asked me a couple of other questions. And he tested me, did all the things that you need to do as, for your visits at the gynecologist. And, and then he later told me, and he's like, looking at your symptoms and what you told me, he's like, you have PCOS. And I was like, PCOS, what's that? I had no clue what that was. I'd never heard of that term. And he's like, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And then he explains to me what it is. And he's like, do you know anybody in your family that has it? Because sometimes it is genetic. It's something that is usually genetic. And I was like, no, this is the first time I'm hearing of it. But I will ask, my mom, is she, she struggled with that. So yeah, so that was my first time being diagnosed with that. And I'm so grateful for that doctor, because a lot of women go to the healthcare provider and they're misdiagnosed, and they're not told that they have PCOS when they present, the symptoms that come with PCOS. Women are usually constantly dismissed by their healthcare providers when it comes to hormonal disorders, because we have so many hormones, and it's very complicated when it comes to hormones. So I am grateful for that doctor, because I was actually not planning to have kids at that time. It was a doctor that is not even a specialist. It wasn't like those expensive doctors. It was a regular, gynecologist who takes in patients who can afford insurance. And that's very rare. Doctors like that to be, very thorough, because usually private doctors are that thorough, or a specialist. So again, that was God's favor, being in my favor, and that I had that doctor to diagnose me and actually put a name to what I was going through. Because in high school, it was very rare to find somebody with that issue of like irregular periods. And then when I did meet somebody who had that issue, they'll be like, oh, I think it's something to do with hormones. And, at that time in high school, you don't really learn much about hormones. You know that it's estrogen and testosterone. That's it. But, you don't learn about insulin resistance because PCOS leads to insulin resistance. And, you don't learn about all the other hormones that you deal with, like cortisol and all that stuff. You learn that later on. So I was so happy, even though it's like bad news, but I was happy that I could put a name to what I was dealing with, that I was not crazy, that I was not weird. And another thing he told me was like, that I was a rare case. And I was like, why am I a rare case? He's like, you're a rare case because you're not obese. And he's like, you don't have trouble with facial hair. And he's like, I can see, you're not having issues with acne. Because at this time, ever since Switzerland, going on to like my 20s, I wasn't having issues, any breakouts. Even when I had my periods, because usually that's what would happen when I had my periods, I'd have breakouts. And this time I wasn't having any breakouts. So he's like, you're a rare case, you don't have the textbook symptoms of someone who would have PCOS. So now it's just like, hey, now I have a name to it. Now I'm like, okay, now I feel weird because I don't have, you know, I felt great. I felt I was lucky, but at the same time, I was like, okay, now it's like I'm weird because I don't have the symptoms of PCOS. And I was like, but does it mean I don't have it? Now I was like doubting. I was like, maybe I'm being misdiagnosed because I don't have all the symptoms that come with PCOS. I just have one of the symptoms, but as time goes by, I realized, doing research and looking into it that yes, the doctor was right. I do have PCOS. And because of that, I was able to be more mindful of my lifestyle, my eating habits, make sure that I sleep, that I get good hours of sleep, make sure that, that I don't consume too many sugars. But again, I'm not perfect. I love ice cream. I love chocolate. Sometimes I would indulge in that more than I should. But because of my experiences ever since I was a kid having those stomach aches, I developed a habit of not overeating. So it worked to my advantage that it created good habits in me when it comes to eating. Like another habit is I learned later on, it is good to eat slow when you're eating and not to eat fast because you actually are more mindful of your body, of when it's full, when you eat slow and you enjoy your food and um, you pay attention to what you're eating, and it also helps with digestion when you eat slow. So it made, and my metabolism was fast at that time, so it really helped my metabolism to continue being fast, and that's why I didn't have issues with weight. And also genetically, I am from a family where we're small, so I didn't struggle with weight because of genes and also because of the PCOS helped me to be more mindful of how I eat, my eating habits. So because of the PCOS, when it was time, when now we were thinking of having kids, I was struggling to have kids. Now I was facing the huge hindrance of like something that I really desired of having kids. But because of that, it reignited my relationship with God because in the midst of me like doubting my fertility and without have kids, God gave me a dream and showed me that I would have kids and I'll have two kids, a boy and a girl. I'll have a girl first and then a boy, and that they'll be close in age. And with God, when it comes to dreams or when He reveals something to you, He never gives you the full picture. He didn't tell me when it will happen, um, what the age difference would be, what they would look like, but in what they would look like in great detail. But I could tell from the image in my dream that they were close in age, and it will be a boy and a girl, and that's exactly what happened. I think a year and a half after that dream, or maybe 2 years, I don't remember. I don't know if I wrote it down, but it's a dream that stuck with me. because it was so powerful, and how it, it was fulfilled. That dream was fulfilled. Um, yeah, I think it happened a year and a half after the dream, or 2 years after the dream. It wasn't too long after the dream, because a lot of my dreams is when God shows you the future, you never know when in the future it'll happen. But I think it was a year or 2 years after that. So it really, that's because of the PCOS, that dream is the dream that I always remember, of how powerful my dreams are, how God gave me the gift of dreams, and that reminder that I do have prophetic dreams, in times when I forgot, in times when I was doubting, what God placed in me. So I'm grateful for the PCOS for that reason too, is because it really um, embarked me on a journey to where I am now, where I have this relationship with God, where I know how He speaks to me, how He reveals things to me. And that was one of the dreams that was a pivotal moment in my life, is how I realized how God reveals stuff to me, how I can communicate with Him, and how He communicates with me, and to be more, and to take my dreams serious. Um, I think of that dream. Having PCOS has made me not take my health for granted. Now, I don't know what I would be like when it comes to health and fitness if I didn't have PCOS. I probably would have taken my health for granted. I probably would have been full of being arrogant when it comes to um, my health and fitness, because genetically I'm small, and PCOS helped me to have a healthy lifestyle. It encouraged me to really take my health seriously, and also my fitness seriously. And I grew up in a family that fitness was the norm, was a lifestyle. And I went to a school where we were forced to be active and to engage in sporting activities. Otherwise, you would get detention. Being in boarding school, we were forced to be in, well, being in the schools that we went to in Zimbabwe, they forced you to be in activities. They forced you to be active. You had to fulfill a certain amount of hours of activities. So those things really were ingrained in me to be active. And also, having PCOS makes you realize that you cannot control everything about your body. You can only control certain things. And it also revealed how I idolize comfort and control, because I like things to be, I want things to be predictable. I don't like when things are uncertain. You want to be able to control so much. So through PCOS, God has shown me, and other things, but PCOS played a role in showing me that I love comfort and control, because I wanted to be like everybody else, be able to predict when I get my period every month, when I'd ovulate and all that stuff. I just wanted to be like everybody else. And God showed me through this disorder that I'm not like everybody else, created to be set apart, to not be of the world. And, with PCOS, you do have to do things different. I could be in a room full of women that are the same age as me, but I can't do what the next woman does when it comes to their eating habits, or what they eat, or what type of fitness that they do. I can't do the same thing. PCOS has taught me to empathize with other women who struggle in fitness and with their health, and that it's not one size fits all when it comes to fitness. Um, I feel like I know that God can heal anything. There's nothing too big for God. And I feel like sometimes when He makes us go through something that is an inconvenience in our life, that is a hindrance in our life, or that is painful in our life, there's always a bigger picture. God has a bigger plan for it. And it's not only about you, it's about the other people that you will impact, that you will affect, that you will help. And I also learned with, having PCOS, that God doesn't need you to be perfect to make, for you to be His vessel, for Him to work through you. He works through imperfect people. He works through people who would be seen as unqualified. And when I started having that desire to help women in health and fitness, I always have imposter syndrome, because I say that I struggle with PCOS, and I haven't mastered it, even though I've had it for so long. I haven't mastered it. I'm still, every year I'm still learning something new about, this disorder. I'm always learning something new. I'm always, my body's constantly changing. When I was in my 20s, it was all about fertility. Like, how can I do things to help myself to have kids? How can what can I do with my health? What do I need to cut out so that I'm able to have a healthy pregnancy, or to be able to um, get pregnant? And, you know, before I know I'm all over the place, but hopefully you guys are getting, but before I got pregnant, when I was seeing my gynecologist and I told her that I was ready to have kids, she, put me on metformin and was like, I want you to be sure that you want to have kids, because I'm telling you, when I put you on this drug, you are going to get pregnant. Her saying that and the dream together, I knew that I would, get pregnant, and that for sure I was going to have kids, even if I have PCOS, because I would read so many articles of women saying that they weren't able to have kids, that, it made them infertile, but I would also hear cases of women who would get pregnant. So I knew that, I'm so grateful for that doctor too. This was now a totally different doctor. I switched gynecologists, and now was a female gynecologist. The first one that diagnosed me was a male gynecologist, and now this was a female one, and she told me, you will get pregnant, if so you have to be sure that you want to take this drug. And metformin is normally for those who are diabetic, because it helps with those who are insulin resistant. So because PCOS is linked to insulin resistance, that's why she gave me metformin. And I found out later, years later, that actually it can be harmful. But again, God was with me, and it did not harm me. My my daughter came out fine. My pregnancy was amazing. I did not have any issues. My appointments were like literally 5 minutes. Anytime I went to see my doctor, everything went fine. So God was with me. Like, I did take metformin throughout my pregnancy, and it helped me to have an easy pregnancy. I feel like I did not have any issues. Um, so so that also grew my faith, and helped me. It took my relationship with God a step further. So the PCOS did not hinder me from having my son 2 years later without any help. Happened naturally. But with PCOS, your body's always changing. And I've learned that, like I said, with fitness, it's not one size fits all. And with health as well, recommending nutritional stuff and things to do with health, it's not a one size fits all. It's really depends on your lifestyle and your body, and um, and also like what you're dealing with internally. With my certification, we're taught not to replace, doctors, but to help, to work, to be in partnership with the doctors, to help clients, with their expertise and with my knowledge, to help them to reach their goals, and to have a great lifestyle, a better lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle, and to be their best selves. So that's, I feel like, because God gave me PCOS, is so that I can be that person that can help those who are having a tough time. Having PCOS has helped me to be mindful of my body, to listen to my body, to how important it is to have good, healthy habits that people think are so simple. Like, sleep is so important for your health. Portion control is important. How the way you eat is important. To have those great skills, healthy skills, so that you can have, quality life. And I feel like if I didn't have PCOS, I wouldn't be able to empathize or to help women, or maybe I wouldn't even be interested in health and fitness. So I feel like God gives us stuff that maybe that, we feel like it's unfair and like an unfair advantage, but to God, it is an advantage. You see it in the Bible, how God used imperfect people used sinners, people that are seen as the worst. He used them for the greater good. And, God, what we see as imperfect is perfect for God. What we see as unqualified is qualified in God's eyes. And, it has, for so many years, I just thought that there was something wrong with me, that I have nothing to offer. Even when I started this journey to like create content on YouTube, I just felt like I have nothing to offer. I compare myself to other fitness trainers, to other coaches, and I'm like, I would think they're perfect and I'm not, because I am dealing with PCOS and they don't have anything that they deal with. They've mastered fitness so they can help people, but that's not the case. Um, and now as I enter, my 40s, there's other things that I have to tackle. I still have other struggles. Now that I've passed the phase of having kids, now I have to be mindful of, you know, my lifestyle, so that when I get older, I still have a good quality life, that I'm not depending on a bunch of medication to function. Now I have to think of now it's all about my metabolism, my making sure I pay attention to anything that is any inflammation, or anything that is triggered by my PCOS, that I tell that to my doctor, and I'm aware, and I'm still an advocate for my health. That's another thing. PCOS has helped me to be an advocate for my health, because doctors are not going to test for something unless you tell them. I was blessed that doctor, quickly diagnosed me, and I didn't have to fight for a diagnosis. Many women have to be persistent to get a diagnosis, and I didn't have to go through that. So I'm grateful to God that didn't happen. That's why I'm like, I was grateful that I had a name to it, and I could work on it, and I could, do research and do better when it comes to my health, and stay active. That's another reason why I am disciplined, because, you know, I can't be lazy and be slacking and I can't be um uh, like I can't be slacking, or like not take my health seriously when you have PCOS, because it can lead to high blood pressure. It can lead to cardiovascular issues. Like PCOS can affect many things. Like our hormones, like really play a huge part in our body. So, and I also learned that when it comes to hormones, you can't balance hormones, because we have so many hormones and our bodies are very complex too. And I also learned through PCOS that um, in the kingdom, we are all important. In the body of Christ, we're all important. We all have a lot to offer, and we're all called to help people in different ways, even if it's in the same industry. Like when we look at our bodies, the nail doesn't say that, oh, I'm not important. Why am I here? The nail is just as important as your mouth, as your eyes, and as your nose. Your nail plays an important part. It's just like your toe doesn't complain and say like, I'm not important because I'm like a toe. What do I do? I don't talk. I don't see. I don't, not like the eyes that sees everything. The toe is important. Like every little function in your body is important. And we're all important in the kingdom. When it comes to God, we're all important. Even if you have a disorder or a disability, or you went through something traumatic, we're all important, and you can help the next person overcome what you overcame or what you're going through. Like we all play a part. We're all important. So that's why I say like I'm grateful for PCOS in my life, because it's taught me so many things. And just to let you know, like if you're going through something, there's a bigger plan. There's a huge bigger plan that God has for you, and He wants to use that so you can help others. And it's not just affects you, but it'll help other people out there who will need you, who will need what you overcame, even if it's you overcame it like a small one step. The fact is, you overcame one step more than the next person who is dealing with the same thing. May not have the same symptoms or the same issues, but you can hear them, you can empathize them. They'll be seen or heard, because people just want to be seen or heard. And another thing that God showed me in a dream is that a lot of women are seeking healing. And when you're in the health and fitness industry, you're in the healing business. You may not be a doctor, but health and fitness, you're healing. It's an industry where you're actually healing yourself. You're learning to self-heal. You're learning to hear your body and to respond to what your body's telling you, and to do what you can in your ability, in what you can control, and to heal your body. So I know that, you know, God placed that desire in my heart to help women in the health and fitness industry, to help them heal, to help them see that they are seen, they're heard, and that they're not crazy, and that their symptoms are valid. What they're feeling is valid. Um, but yeah, it has helped me understand God more. The Having PCOS has helped me understand God more, and how He operates, how He sees us, how He doesn't. We don't need to be perfect for Him to use us for the greater good, for us to be effective in the kingdom, for us to help others. We don't need to be perfect. So I hope this was helpful. That you understood this video, and I wasn't all over the place. And you know, I'm still learning. I still have struggles. I still have things that I need to figure out. I'm on top of PCOS. I'm going to have to deal with perimenopause and then menopause. So there's a lot. I haven't mastered it, and I'm still learning. But I know that I do want to help other women out there, and help them on their journey, and help them also to just know that I'm in the corner, and that I'm there, and be that accountability partner that they need, um, to reach, their goals and what they want to achieve. So thank you for watching. If you reached this far, thank you so much for watching. I do, if you've been watching my dream videos, I do have a free guide that I created to help you to understand meanings to things that show up in your dreams, help you to to interpret your dreams. So I have a free guide in the description box below if you want to check that out. But yeah, that's it for today. I will see you in the next video. Bye.